Now that we have added inquiries successfully, what I want is I want admin to see all the inquiries that were submitted. For that, we'll be using data tables. In order to display in a table format, we have done that in product application type, but we used a simple for each loop. If you have data tables, you get some advantages like you have sorting, pagination, and search functionality right out of the box. The CDN for data table, if we switch back to our application, we have already added that in underscore layout. Let me go there. So right here, when we added the CSS and styling, we already added the data tables. We'll scroll down. We also have the JS for data tables. That being said, how do you use them? We have to use JavaScript file to load data tables, and for JavaScript, we need to access an API that will retrieve all the values for our data table for inquiry list. So first thing, we'll have to switch back to our application. In here, we need to add a new controller for inquiry. So let's add a new controller. Right here, you see we are facing an error. And I believe this is because they are working on the preview version, and scaffolding, they are still working on that. We don't have to worry. We can just copy any of the existing controller, paste it here, and let me call this as inquiry controller. We need to make some changes. We'll copy the name and we'll make sure constructor has those same name, and let's delete all of the other action methods inside this controller. In future, with Visual Studio, once they update, you won't face this error and you'll be able to add an empty controller. Perfect, this looks good. We have the inquiry controller, which extends from the controller class. Now inside here, we'll be displaying the inquiry header, and then user will be able to see the inquiry details. So for that, what we need is we need the inquiry header repository and the inquiry detail repository. Along with that, we need to decide on what will be a model. For the index page, we can use the inquiry view model, which will display all of the details about inquiry. For displaying all of the category, we can just use the list of inquiry. But for details, we will need inquiry header as well as detail. So when we have such scenario, it's best to create a view model. So inside the view models folder, we'll add a new class, and I'll call this inquiry view model. Inquiry view model will have only two properties. We'll make it public, and we'll have public inquiry header. We'll name it as inquiry header with getter and setter. And next we need inquiry details. Now one inquiry header will have multiple inquiry details. So we'll use IEnumerable of inquiry detail, and I'll call this as inquiry detail. This looks good for our inquiry view model. Inside the inquiry controller, let's add the repository for header and detail. Perfect, so we have added dependency injection for header and detail. Let me also add an action method for index action. So it will be public, return will be IActionResult, and will return an index. In here, we will be just returning an empty view. So this looks good. Now in the next video, let's add this index view and proceed from there.